All right. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight for Reaching the Dream, panel discussion on first-generation college students, specifically students who graduated and live around Hillsboro. So thank you for joining us tonight. This event is brought to you as part of Hillsboro Reads, which is our community-wide reading program. This year's Hillsboro Reads book selection is In the Country We Love. Oh, sorry. In the Country We Love, My Family Divided by Diane Guerrero. It is a personal story of the challenges Diane faced as a citizen child of undocumented parents. At the end of this event, we will be providing a link to a survey. I don't want to beg, but your input is so important to our entire program. We rely on your feedback to make sure that every Hillsboro Reads program is engaging and relevant to our community in Hillsboro. So please take a moment to go ahead and fill out that survey at the end of the program. Also, I just want to promote two really cool events coming up that are a part of Hillsboro Reads. Coming on, coming on March, let's see, I'm sorry, here we go. Well, I will just go ahead and talk them up at the end of the session. I will go ahead and introduce our panelists tonight. We have a wonderful panel. So we'll start with Vanessa Santiago, who will be the moderator this evening. She is a product of Oregon public education and mighty fine example. She is a graduate of Hillsboro High, Hill High, and received both her bachelor's and her master's from the University of Oregon. She is the education liaison and migrant education program graduation specialist for the Hillsboro School District. Thank you for coming. And let's see, Fernando Aguilar is a graduate of Glencoe High and the Portland Community College Future Connect program. He graduated with a bachelor's in biology from Pacific University, and he is also a product of the Hillsboro Public Library. And are you still on call as a library assistant?
Yeah, so I'm still on call. I haven't picked up a shift in a long time, but I will in a few weeks.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Elena Garcia is also a graduate of Glencoe High, class of 2016, and currently in her second year at Portland State University. Do I have that? Do I have that right?
It's actually my first year.
First year. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's a heck of a first year. Eric Portillo. Hi, Eric. Eric is a graduate of Liberty High and a marketing specialist for MTI. He attended PCC Rock Creek, where he was student body vice president, and received his bachelor's in communication and media studies from Portland State University. Neri Macias is an instructor and college success coach at Portland. She has I just love your description on your LinkedIn page. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to steal that. It says, Neri is passionate about higher education. Both access and retention of first-generation students are her area of interest. And she hopes to one day start her own college access program focusing on college access and post-secondary retention. And finally, last but definitely not least, Flamur Vahapi. Good evening. Flamur is a researcher, writer, poet, academic, instructor, educator, and currently an academic success coach at PCC Southeast at Portland Community College. He was born in Kosovo and was later exiled by the brutal Serbian regime in the late 90s, which is an incredible story. And I will go ahead and put the link to your website in the chat later because it's an incredible story. After moving to the United States, he was able to pursue higher education and receive degrees in counseling psychology, a master's in conflict resolution, and is currently pursuing a PhD in education and leadership from Pacific University. And with that, my friends, I will hand it over to Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Brian, for this opportunity. I'm very excited for this conversation. As a first-generation college, high school graduate myself, I love having these conversations because everybody's journey is different, and it's really important to connect with those who have similar experiences, to just talk about how much we've grown and how much we continue to find ways to support other students or families that are going through the same situation. So thank you for hosting this space. All right, so we have a few questions ready for the panelists. Panelists, please feel free to answer any of the following questions if they pertain to your work or your journey towards reaching the dream, which is the title of tonight's discussion. And so I'm gonna go ahead and open up with the first question. So first question, what do you wish you knew before starting your college journey? And anybody can feel free to jump in.
Okay, I guess I'll start.
Okay.
So I think my biggest takeaway is that mentors help you a lot along the way. Because when we first start, we think, we're gonna go in it alone. But when you start making, friends with your professors or other classmates, you start to push each other. And that's kind of like a way to, keep each other accountable so you guys reach the same goal. One of my examples is that I was actually in Future Connect with Eric at the same time. So even though we went to different colleges, we were able to keep in touch and be like, hey, how's PSU going? How's Pacific going? And we just, pushing each other to earn that bachelor's degree.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say exactly what you said, Fernando, and also a key takeaway for me is the path isn't linear. You can go into college thinking that you're going to become a doctor. I mean, when we did Future Connect, Fernando knows I wanted to be a physical therapist, and I ended up with a career in marketing. So the path isn't linear. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. You're probably 18, 19. I was 17 when I started college. It's hard to kind of determine what your whole life is going to be. Right at that age, you're really young. You're starting off your adult years, so it's good to know that the path isn't linear, and you will find yourself. It's just a matter of you trying new experiences, trying something new, and just putting yourself out there. You don't know what's going to inspire you. And when you graduate, you should be empowered because you're the first generation to get a degree. And that's an accomplishment in and of itself because from what I don't want to speak for everybody's experience, but for mine, my parents all throughout their whole lives, they've only had jobs that were landscaping, custodians. They still are custodians. So it's good to put yourself out there and know that you're doing good things if you pursue higher education, because I'm all for it. I think it's the right path for people, and it's statistically proven. If you have more education, if you have the credentials, you will make higher income, and that will, probably inspire you, like it inspired me to give back to the community. So yeah, that's a lot, but that's what I have to say about the situation.
Great points. Thank you for sharing. For me, I guess I was going to, tackle this from a different point. I guess just knowing how much it was going to cost, I had no idea what I was getting into. And I think a lot of students are in that position, right? Now, luckily, there is, for most students, not everyone, scholarships and grants and all of that, but we know that not everyone qualifies for those, which is a problem in itself. So just knowing that, at some point you might go broke and be ready for it, right? So I would, recommend save as much as you can, because you never know how this journey is going to go. But because at the end of the day, you are going for that degree, and sometimes we have to make, sacrifices, right, until we reach our goals. So that would be one of them. And another one would be definitely consider a community college. Very often I hear from students, I want to go to university because community college is this way or that way. There's so many misconceptions about community colleges. And this is interesting because even when I came to this country, I had to get a student visa, right? And the person at the embassy said, "You're going to a community college? Why?" And I'm thinking to myself, of course, for me, I didn't even know what that meant. Like, so why not community college? Well, that's just a community college. And again, this is a person working, representing the United States, right? A US embassy. And just saying that, it just made no sense until I came here and I really saw that for myself. But I think for me, one of the best things I've done for myself is going to a community college, because studies have shown that students who go to a community college first do a lot better in the university setting as compared to those who do not get that exposure. And again, not everyone, but most students who get that exposure before they enter university, they do a lot better. So I'm grateful for that, and I hope more students consider that before entering university.
Thank you, Flamor. That's such a great point. I work with first generation college high school students, and their parents are often like, how can I make sure my student can just go straight to a 4-year? And there's a lot of stigma in attending community college, but there's so many positives, like you just mentioned. And I feel like that's part of the work that we do, working in education, is like getting rid of those myths, right? Of like, this is okay. And it touches on a few of the other responses, that no path is linear. Everybody's path is different. And so you just gotta, take out opportunities and not be driven by others and others' expectations, because you might be able to save money, get some more support. Community colleges have such amazing programs that could support you to transition if you do want to continue on and get your, a bachelor's and so on. But thank you for mentioning that. Anybody else that would like to answer this question?
Yeah, I can share. I was just going to echo what Eric said about, paths not being linear. I think for myself, I didn't consider going to college until my senior year of high school. And thankfully, I was a college-bound student because I had very strict parents that wouldn't have it any other way. But I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I could go to college. And I did go to a 4-year university directly after high school, but I felt a huge pressure because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I think that I wish I would have known prior to going to college that it's okay. And that's actually what college is for. It is the opportunity for you to explore and learn about your interests and learn about your own identity and find what, makes you excited about education. And I think I applied a lot of pressure to myself when I didn't necessarily need to. And I think teaching first year college students now, I see that a lot in my students as well, of that pressure of knowing exactly what it is that they're going to do at 17 or 18 years old.
Yeah, thank you, Nettie. That's a great point. I find myself right now with COVID and distance learning, I find myself wanting my students those that are like 3.5 and above, I'm like, no, like you should look at 4-year universities. And, I'm really trying to like be more aware and be like, okay, no, if this is a good path for them, if this is something that will work for them, that 3.6 or whatever that they have right now will shine through all the way until they finish. This isn't like a cutting point. Like just because they don't go to a 4-year right away doesn't mean they're not gonna, be prosper and have a great experience and have like access to all the opportunities, right? Because if anything, that might be like a bigger probability that they access those, because they might get the supports they need at a community college that perhaps at a big university, they would kind of struggle to get. So thank you so much. I'm gonna continue on to the next question that kind of echoes a lot of the responses that we've had right now. So the next question is, the concept of a singular college experience looms large in our popular imagination. How would you describe the college experience to prospective first-generation students and their families?
That's a great question. I can start. I think one of the ways that I've often described college is it is what you make of it. And so I think a lot of students go in with the mentality of a career in mind that they're like working towards, but they're so focused on what comes after that they don't take the time to enjoy what's presently happening around them. And so I strongly encourage students to take advantage of the opportunities, find their people, find what makes them happy, and really embrace the time that they have. So that's one of the ways that I would describe it.
I can go next. The college experience can be scary, but it could also be very exciting. And I think it's different for everyone. Personally, at PCC, it was pretty mellow. I would attend classes and then I would go home. And before COVID got to the point to where it's gotten, I'd planned on being more active in school. I wanted to join organizations at PSU, and I had written down some that I found interesting, but because everything's online now, there hasn't been much planned within those organizations. So the college experience is just what you want it to be. Small actions like deciding whether you join a school organization or not could shape how you experience college.
I can add more to that. So yeah, I think it is true that it can be anything you want it to be. So for example, my long-term goal is to become a family dentist, but that's going to take a long time. So what I did when I was doing my undergrad is I found ways to get involved with my community to make it more fun. So it's like volunteering, going to city council events, just anything to make your experience more memorable. And that could be anything. Like back in high school, I used to be big into playing mariachi. see the guitar right there. So yeah, just obviously go for your goal, but also find ways to make it a memorable experience.
Thank you, Elena, Fernando. That I definitely agree. I think building community, right? Because I feel like if you're a first generation student and you're, dumped into a college campus, community college campus, sometimes it's really easy to feel alone. And so that the strength in finding community, a support network, a support system is so important, right? And making it enjoyable, like you said, Fernando. It's not all about your GPA. It's like there needs to be a balance, because it shouldn't be a very taxing. We should find ways to enjoy it, especially because we worked so hard to get there. And so thank you for highlighting that. Anybody else? All right, I will jump into the next question, and feel free, panelists, if you would like to, if you think of something later on, if you would like to add to any prior question, please feel free to do so. This is an open discussion. These questions are just to kind of lead us through it and get us started. So if you think of anything, or as anything pops up within the next few minutes, feel free to jump in. All right, next question. And it's been touched on a little bit earlier by Fomor. So I'm gonna go ahead and share it now. So how or did you and your family share the financial responsibility for college expenses? Again, how or did you and your family share the financial responsibility for college expenses?
Could I go first on this one? Okay. So for me, I started college as an undocumented student back in 2014. So that was quite a bit away. And back then there wasn't many resources for these sorts of students. So for me, what that involved is I was working close to full time at a fast food restaurant to pay for my tuition and everything that came along with it. My family wasn't able to help me because I got younger siblings. So that's where most of their income goes to. So I usually like to share my story, because even if you're undocumented and there's no scholarships out there, there's still a way to get an education. So what happened is I decided to start community college. I went through it. I got the best grades possible. I got involved in my community, and eventually that was able to lead a path for me to get scholarships and finish my bachelor's degree.
Thank you, Fernando.
So true. My journey very similar there. What you shared, Fernando. I feel like every time I applied for scholarships, I'll get a letter sorry, you have to be a citizen or a permanent resident or something like that. And of course, when I started community college, I was on a student visa. I came here as a student, but I was so desperate that I would apply anyway and hope that somebody would be I want to help the student, right? But it was a challenge. And what I ended up doing is I worked three part-time jobs on campus. I was going to school full-time. My parents were helping a little bit. And then the college itself would have, just like we have at BCC, the BCC Foundation or the College Foundation, very often would have some opportunity to have those requirements. Because as most of us know, there's so many barriers in the system that really make it very difficult for a student to really get from point A to point B. So that was very unfortunate, but I feel like there are good people out there who were willing to listen to you and I want to help you. I did a lot of fundraisers on my own, whether online or in person. I would actually go give talks in the community just so that I could get involved, meet more people. And sometimes it would be somebody would say, I actually want to know how much does school cost for you? And I would tell, well, 3 times as much as it would cost for a US citizen. How can it be possible? But those are the struggles, and I know a lot of people are going through that, right? And I don't think there is much being done in that respect to ease that burden. A lot of students who really are trying to, at the end of the day, trying to graduate, get an education, improve their lives, and at the end of the day, the lives of the community members that they're going to serve one day. So that is something that we should bring up, right? Because when I get my degree, I'm not going to keep my degree to myself. I want to share it with my community, right? But at some point, maybe our community could be there for us as well, right? To support us in that journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Flamor. I totally agree. I think both of you and Fernando brought up a very important point that there's still a lot of work to be done to make higher education accessible to a lot of the communities that are in our community, that are represented in our community. And like you said, I think many of us who are like first in our family or first to do anything, like we don't do it just for ourselves, we do it for our entire family. And it's a journey that we take to kind of, pave those paths for them. And with the hope that things can get easier as we continue to have more representation, more awareness, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else would like to answer that question?
I can share a little bit. So I am the daughter of immigrants. And so I was first gen and low income. My dad lost his job my senior year of high school and was on permanent disability after that. And so I knew that going to college was not going to be cheap for my family. And so I was very fortunate to be able to take advantage of federal programs. So I was in the Educational Opportunity Program, which is a federally funded grant program. I was a part of TRIO Student Support Services in college as well, which again, federally funded program for first generation and low income students. And so I found myself in a situation where I was in an EFC situation of 0, which was both great and not great, right? So not great because my family was struggling financially, but great because I was able to take advantage of these support services at my college that were able to really help split the bill with me and make it a little more affordable for myself. And I didn't put any of that on my parents. I didn't ask for any financial help from them. And I was very privileged to be able to do that. But I realized it was only through these college access programs that I was able to get connected with.
Thank you so much, Nettie. It's so important to stay connected and, take advantage of those opportunities. I think the next question goes really well with this, because even though there are opportunities out there, we often find students who are just not getting reached that need it. So the next question is, what can colleges do to best support first generation students? I can start. So I work very closely. The work that I do is very geared towards family engagement. So I work with high school students, primarily migrant education program students, mostly Latinx English learner families. And my main thing is incorporating our first generation families along the ride with their students, because it's so important. And I think about it now after my college experience, because I have now time to reflect, right? I'm not busy and stressed out and all that and whatnot. But I often would think, wow, like I wish I could explain to my parents like what this whole process is. But sometimes you don't even have the language. And so like I think colleges can definitely find ways, if they were to find ways to incorporate different communities, like different families, different people with different backgrounds, because I always think about, if you were in a sorority or a fraternity, they have like mom's weekend and dad's weekend if you go to like a traditional like four-year university. And it's often, families who are like second, third generation college students. They are not low income, usually mostly white families, and those are the families that are on campus and doing all the stuff. And I went to U of O, and so only 2 hours from here. And I think my parents visited me once in the 4 years, and it was to drop something off, because I feel like looking back, I was like, I wonder if they just never found like themselves like welcomed to campus. And also I feel like I was just too busy and like overwhelmed that I never even took the time to say, hey, like, let me walk you through campus, let me show you. And I've done that now after I graduated, but I was like, dang, I wish I would have given them a tour, and I wish I would have, had conversations with them about, what I'm going through, because it would have been much easier, right? So I think incorporating families in the transition of, high school to college, I think that's something that colleges can definitely do for retention, for all kinds of purposes. Because a lot of my friends that I started college with like dropped out, and I always wonder like, oh, like why, like, and it's really sad to see that, because you like I mentioned earlier, we go as a community, and it's just so empowering when you're there with other people that you grew up with, and that, and so I always thought about that. But definitely incorporating families of all cultures into the especially first generation college graduate or high school graduate families in the process.
Agreed, Vanessa. And I want to add to that. I feel like I don't want to speak in everybody's background, but my family was Latino, so we're Latinx, and I feel like college is supposed to prepare you for life, right? So I think one way to kind of help the generation, be on par with those that aren't first generation would be personal finance classes and more career ready classes. And the reason why is when you graduate college, when you're in college, you're kind of on your own. You take classes, what you need and what's on your major, what you have to graduate with. And I feel like personal finance and career ready classes are two essential classes that would benefit the population that we're talking about here. And the reason why is from what our background is, we don't know how to negotiate our salaries. We don't know how to put together a resume, because we never had anybody that had that how to put together a resume for a corporate job or something like that. So something that can help us like that, prepare ourselves in that manner would be great. And also, the transition to family as well, because we're very collectivistic in our culture. I don't want to say our culture, but from my culture, because I don't want to speak to everybody else's, but the family, being part of there as a family, and career ready classes and personal finance classes would kind of help that, help those that are marginalized to be more ready for the real world, and potentially give back to the community. Because when the community helps you, you're way more motivated to give back. And Tomar, right? That's your name. I 100% agree with you. You can even talk to Brian. As soon as he sent this email out, I was like, I'm doing it. I don't care. I don't care that I have a busy work day, that I go to school full time still. I'm going to do it because you're more motivated. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if anything pops up later on in the conversation, please feel free to just jump in. As sometimes these questions need some time to reflect. So feel free to jump in. I'm going to continue on to the next question. So despite all the barriers that you all faced individually as a community, you made it, and you're still navigating. I mean, at least for me, like I can say I'm still navigating the education system, now working in it, because it's definitely not set up for myself or my community. So I'm now, the work is still continuing, right? But like I mentioned, we did it into many of our community members or people that see themselves reflected in us. In some way or another, we are kind of that example of like, oh, it's possible, right? So the next question is, in your experience, what was the most helpful thing that you did in high school to prepare you for college?
For me, I think it goes back to the earlier question, really doing some research about the school itself, because the college, university, whatever that is, because as we all know, this is not a mystery to anyone, but the system is very complex. It is really not streamlined to help the student, to make it easier for students. I was one of those, and I do have a lot of students, this year, who could be going to school, but because they could not find ways to sign this paper or submit this paper, and all of a sudden they fell behind, they can't go to school. This is the second year this student, two of them can't go to school because they just have fallen behind on these things. And then at some point they're going to be like, why am I pursuing this, right? Because it's not working. No one is there, even though we're trying. Obviously, you can only do so much, with COVID and online, all of that. So definitely simplifying the system would help. Colleges definitely could put more resources on that to make it work for the student. Because it really has been like this for a while, and it hasn't changed very much. Very unfortunate. So one thing that has helped me was really trying to research, like what are these things, right? I had to do my own research. I didn't have a coach like my students do, our students do here with Nareda. I had to be my own coach. So researching that piece alone, because it requires a lot, because it is a complex system. And the next thing I would say is really researching some majors, because there's so many out there. Students get lost. It is so helpful to have a few options out there, right? Sometimes we think, well, the more the better, right? In this case, sometimes it goes against what the student wants, right? Because they're just getting lost. There's so many choices. So having someone to narrow that focus and narrow their interests early on. Again, people can always change their majors and so on, but just having a few options out there they can look at. And if they don't like it, that's totally okay. But at least having some, instead of like throwing them out there in the ocean, like, okay, pick your own fish, right? Like, well, I don't know where. Well, that's all you got. You're on your own. So going back to the earlier question, I would say also having a mentor assigned from an early stage, like we do in our program in Future Connect. We try to help our students because we've gone through that process, right? But having people who were students themselves, maybe a year like into the program or something like that, that can coach the incoming student, has shown great results in many other schools, many other states, and many other expensive schools. Obviously not every school has the money to do that, but those who have been able to do that, they've seen great results.
Thank you so much, Flamor. Anybody else would like to jump in?
Yeah, so I was going to say that one of the big things for me is having a huge initiative. So in high school, I was trying all sorts of things to see what I was interested in. That meant that I ended up focusing on the sciences because I wanted to become like a doctor or a dentist. That was one aspect. But another one was just like applying to all sorts of clubs and volunteer opportunities. Like sometimes you might not get something you're going for, but in my opinion, it's always been better to go for it. And that kind of helped me for college because I was able to do more of that. And I think that kind of like helped build my character and just gave me more motivation to keep going forward. And eventually I was able to like land a full ride scholarship that paid for my bachelor's degree. So it was just that initiative, like never count yourself out. If you think there's something out there that might be good for you, just go ahead and try it. What's the worst that can happen?
Yep, exactly what I was going to say, Fernando. Just put your name in the hat. You never know. You might get it. I would also add to visit the Career Center. I'm not sure how all high schools are globally, but Liberty High School had a Career Center. That's a good place to go to if you're interested in like internships. And we were lucky enough to have someone in there that was really motivated to helping high school students. I forget the name of the receptionist there, but I owe her pretty much my degree because I'm a Future Connect student. And when you're in high school, I mean, high school students, they really don't see the benefit of college just yet. And I didn't at first. I thought I was going to join the Marines, but my medical condition didn't let me join the Marines, so I had to look for college as my second option. And I remember that I applied for the scholarship, and they had a workshop, and if you missed it, you weren't going to get it. I believe that's what the rule was. And I was in class and I didn't, put a reminder for myself. And the receptionist, since she was really motivated to help the students, she actually came into my class. She knocked on the door. Eric, the workshop is happening right now. You got to register for your FAFSA. And I did my FAFSA and everything. And because of her, I was able to get the scholarship. Sometimes we need that, someone needs to hit you like that. Hey, you got to do this because this is your opportunity or else somebody else can get it. So, also finding those people in high school, and you'll get them if if you put yourself out there and you make connections, because more likely than not, there's usually one person in that high school that really cares about your future. And if you find them, you're really lucky. And I was lucky enough to find that person. I was going to actually visit her after I graduated PSU, but then the pandemic happened. But it's still on my to-do list. And if she's watching, I owe you my my deepest gratitude. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. And the important, those guardian angels that we just have around us, right? And you never know who it is. And so thank you for sharing that experience. So you all sort of touched on how the importance of just not giving up, staying connected, using your resources. However, I know I'm almost 100% sure that we can all say it's not easy. And there are moments where we do want to, throw the towel. And so the next question is, share a moment in which you considered giving up during your college experience, and what or who was it that inspired you to keep going?
I can share. So I mentioned I was in college support programs. So now I feel like I'm giving it back to my students as serving as their mentor, because I had a mentor in college that believed in me. And so I just remember, being on my fourth major and having no idea what I wanted to do and feeling like a level of guilt associated, because I knew that it was hard on my parents for me to be away for college. I was only 2 hours away as well. But being 2 hours away from them and feeling that guilt of them not knowing why I was there. And so I began questioning why I was there myself. And so it was my mentor that reminded me why I was there. and kind of brought me back down from that high of like, I don't belong, and that feeling of, you know, an imposter syndrome. Like, I don't belong here. No one looks like me. I shouldn't be here. And so I think, yeah, he brought me down from it, and he basically told me like, you're going places. And at the time I was like, okay, that's what you tell people, because you want to tell people that. But the program that I was in, Trio SSS, did a graduate school tour where they took students in the program to go tour graduate schools, and it shifted location. But the year that I was invited to go, or selected to go, was in Chicago. And I think that was the first time I was able to see someone that believed in me more than I wanted to believe in myself. And, you know, seeing that they saw something in me that I was not willing to see. And so that was a very powerful experience for me, because I was just about ready to throw in the towel and just call it quits. So having that mentorship was very powerful.
For me, there was one instance when, as soon as I got my associates and went over to PSU, my FAFSA didn't come through, and I was running really low on money. And that was all on me, because I was spending a lot of time studying, and then I didn't look at my registration as thoroughly as I should have. And I ended up not getting the FAFSA for that semester. And yeah, as soon as my money went dry, there was a waiting period, and I wasn't going to be able to get it until the following year. That was kind of that kind of made me, you know, I thought about taking a break, but you know, seeing your environment, my mom was working 2 jobs and she has a bad leg, so I told myself, really, you're perfectly fine. You know, you can get an extra job to, you know, pay for your tuition. So I guess for me, it was just a matter of just seeing your surrounding and just realizing you have nothing to lose. So might as well just keep going and go with what you can. And yeah, I applied for scholarships, and I believe I got another one. It was like for $500, and yeah, it helped. Again, just throwing your name in the hat. You never know, you might get what you need. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I have a different take on this one. So when I was at the community college, I felt like it was really easy for me. I was, you know, an honor student. I think I finished with a 3.7, and it was a big wake-up call when I transferred to the 4-year Pacific University, because for the first time, I was actually taking classes for my major, which was biology. And let me tell you, the difference between taking, you know, full-time at PCC and Pacific with a STEM major was a big shock to me, because I was still working to pay my bills. So there was like a moment after the first semester where I wasn't sure like if I was smart enough to continue this path of me wanting to become a dentist eventually, because everything just seemed so much difficult. And I thought, if this is the beginning, you know, what's ahead? Like, I can't even imagine at this moment. But I think what helped me is that I had a friend that transferred from the same cohort to Pacific. She did something like business, but she was still there for me. And she told me, you know, like, if I made it this far, I should keep trying. Like, I should not let one semester, you know, determine the rest of my life. So I did that. I became more proactive, office hours, you know, and I have my degree now, and I'm studying so I can hopefully start OHSU next year. But yeah, like, you shouldn't let one small setback, you know, determine the whole course of your life, because there's so many more things, you know, you can do to go forward.
It's such a good reminder. Thank you. I was just thinking about, for me, it wasn't academics. Either I for some reason, school had, you know, I've been a school nerd for all my life. So I love school. So it wasn't academics that was challenging. It was mostly missing my family, because I had left. I moved across the world to go to school, and all of a sudden, like within a year, which it seems like the first year is the hardest, as almost everyone says that. But just thinking like, what's going to happen back home, right? And like, what about my family? That was my only struggle for the first year. It was very difficult. If I'd never been depressed in my life until the first year I came to this country, started going to school, even though school was just fine. I felt like I was removed from a community, a very supportive community, because where I grew up, I always had a very supportive community, big family, people all the time around me. And then being planted in a different continent with the closest neighbor about 2 miles away from where I lived, no humans around. And that was not my picture of America, by the way. My picture of America was New York City, and I end up in Jacksonville, Oregon, even in a remote place there, live with the family. That was very difficult. So that was the first time I said, I want to go back. I just can't do this. This is too much, because I just longed for that sense of support as well as belonging that comes with community. So but I overcame that. It was very interesting. After a year or so, I felt like, okay, I can do this. I can, use Messenger. Back then, we used to use Skype and all of that. So that worked out. But I would say that was the hardest thing. But I guess people, we have a saying in my culture, people are stronger than rocks. They're just, so resilient, right? Wherever you put us, we survive. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Felmore. It's so important, right? There's so many layers about the experience, like your health, your mental health, the environment you find yourself in just plays such a huge part in how you, survive. And like you said, it's so important to remind ourselves about the resilience that our community has, and that is passed on to us, right? And so I think because of that, we take all opportunities to heart, right? Because you think, I often find myself thinking, my parents didn't have this opportunity. What's my excuse? I have no excuses. And I always think about that. I have no excuses to not push forward, because my parents and my ancestors, they did the hard work. Now I'm here. Right. And so, that saying, we're our ancestors' wildest dreams, because perhaps, a few generations back or one generation back, maybe our families didn't see themselves in education or in other systems, in our society. And so we're here, and, it's really important to acknowledge the progress we've done. And even though it's hard, we're here and we continue to push forward. So thank you, Flamor, for that. And I have one last question to wrap up our conversation tonight. Again, thank you all so much for sharing these amazing experiences and not so amazing experiences, right? But that in some way or another have shaped us, our passions, what we do. We've been able to discover a lot about ourselves personally, right? Through these different stages in our lives. And so for those that are currently in the situation where they're trying to decide whether they should or shouldn't go to college, the question is, what advice would you give to high school students who are trying to decide whether or not they should pursue a higher education? And what advice would you give to their families?
I'll go ahead and start. I am all about options, and that is what I tell my students all the time. Give yourself the option. Don't tell yourself no without first trying it. Or as I think Eric said it earlier, put your name in the hat, give yourself that opportunity. For once in your life, be the one to say no. if you've applied and you've done your FAFSA and you've gotten all your scholarships and it's still not feeling right, you're the one that's saying no, and it's not everything else saying no because you didn't try. And so that would be my recommendation, is be involved with the process and definitely just try it out.
I completely agree with what you just said. And I think it just depends on why you don't want to go. If you're worried about money, like people have mentioned, community college is definitely an option. It's basically kind of the same education you'd be getting at university, only cheaper. And as for parents, just support your child. If they go to college, ask how it's going. I think parents often have a different understanding as to what will be required of the kids when they go to college. And this is like for if your kid still lives with you when they go, but they may stay on campus late in the evening, or they may spend more time at the library to study when they haven't done so in high school. And the thing is that they may have some of the same responsibilities, such as having to do homework and studying, but in college it's amplified because deadlines for those things are set in stone. Like you can't retake tests or quizzes, you can't turn in your assignments late. So I think it's good for parents to understand how college works and how it can impact their kids' social life, or just how they act around family and how much time it can actually take.
Well said. I completely agree. And also to add to that, if it's gonna take, all experiences are different. It took me 5 years to graduate, but I like the experience that I gained. And also, if you're embarrassed to take the low-level classes, please don't be. I took ESL classes, and really there should be no shame in that. Your second language was English. So yeah, if it takes longer because you have to take classes to be at the level where you're supposed to be, yeah, don't be ashamed of that. I'm part of what I did for my career is I'm a copywriter. So my grammar has to be really, really well. Has to be really well put together. And I still struggle with that sometimes because in Spanish, we say, our sentences are backwards. And for English, I get confused. So yeah, please don't be ashamed to take those classes. It's going to help you out a lot. Like I said earlier, it's statistically proven that you will make more money if you get higher education. And also, when you get a job, I wanted to say this as well. Please know your worth. I was a marketing specialist for MTI. I left the job actually 2 weeks ago, and the reason why is I feel like I wasn't getting paid the money that I wanted. And if you feel like you're bringing in more to the table, like I was actually getting them results. I helped them gain 2 awards. I brought them in more customers, and I was still getting paid the same salary as I did as an intern. Please don't stay. You'll find better options out there. You came here to live a better life, so don't be afraid to ask for more. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
You brought up a great point, Eric. I think, and at least for my family, job security has always been something that you just really hold on to. Like if you have a job, that means you're going to be there for 40 years because you're grateful for being there and not, you know what I mean? Rather than really like advocating for yourself, your needs and all that, you're more thankful to them for even trusting you with a job, right? And I feel like our generation and more generations after us are really breaking that narrative, because we don't need to they need to fit our needs, and they need to honor the skills and the experiences that we bring that perhaps other folks don't, right? And sometimes I think often our communities of color are taking advantage of this because we're, again, often the first to be able to work in specific sectors. And you're just like, whoa, how did I even make it here? That whole imposter syndrome, right? And it happens I think it's a lifelong thing. I don't think there's a way to, I think, work around it, but it definitely pops up here and there. It's an old friend, right? That's just there with us. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I think definitely it's something that we need to address and to move forward, because otherwise they're going to continue to take advantage of a lot of the skills that we bring. And so by us just saying no, and you know what, or burning a bridge, which is another thing. Sometimes I feel like for my families, like it's really important for them to like have good relationships with everybody. And so that means like loyalty, that means, all that stuff. And like, sometimes you gotta be loyal to yourself, right?
Exactly.
And be like, like for real, like you can't, fit other people's needs before yours. And so thank you for bringing that up.
Of course, yeah. And as soon as I left, the employees were actually like, yeah, I completely agree. You deserve the raise, but they weren't budging. So, yeah, if they're not willing to help you out with your needs, why even stay? I mean, my mom kind of got upset. She's like, oh, you cut your only source of income. But I told her it's just a matter of principle. If they're not willing to respect you, why even stay and work for something because I was working 60 hours a week. And I was putting in way more work than everybody else. I don't mean to sound cocky, but it's the fact that I was working more hours than everybody else. So if they weren't willing to budge, yeah, just leave. Ask for more, and you'll find something that will actually cater to your needs. So yeah, thank you, Vanessa.
And wow, thank you all for, I think, a truly beautiful conversation. I found it just really inspiring and moving, and gave me a lot of feels and a lot of great things to think about tonight. And I truly appreciate just how giving you were of your time and your experience. And I feel very lucky to share a community with all of you. Gives me no small bit of hope. So that I am just going to paste a link into the chat for a survey. And if our attendees could take the time to go ahead and fill that out, it would be truly helpful to the planning of the next Hillsboro Reads. Yes, I just wanted to promote really quickly, coming up on the March 13th, we have Your Story, Your Voice, creative writing workshop with Jennifer De Leon, a YA author, which is just a fantastic opportunity for all young writers and old writers too. It's a really wonderful opportunity to sit in on a workshop with a published author. And we're also presenting on March 20th, Play, Connection, and Community Improv for People in Crisis, which is, I think, fascinating and really interesting chance to explore the power of improvisational theater for healing. And with that, thank you, Neri. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Fernando. Flamur, thank you. Our wonderful moderator, Vanessa, thank you so much for your time tonight and everything. And Stronger Than Rocks is going to be I think that's going to be my motto for this 21.
Thank you.
Thank you all.